Well, hey, everybody, glad to be with you for another one of our Zoom business boosts. And we are excited because we have one of our brand new members over the last couple months here, Jabari Peoples, with us from Overwatch Secure LLC. And he's got quite a fascinating background. I'm going to let him talk a little bit about, but we are talking about situational awareness. And, Jabari, you talk a lot about leadership but what I've noticed about leadership is that that's a very broad topic. And what you do and how you train leaders and their teams is very specific, which I love. And I'm excited to have you share with us today. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for being one of our chamber members. And why don't you share a little bit about your background and how you got into this to even do training like this?
Well, thanks, Chris. Appreciate you guys having me on. A little bit about my background as far as the security, intelligence, human behavior analysis side. Started back in the military, crossed over from Marine Corps to the Army, from mechanized infantry to communications. And one of our missions going to Bosnia was more intel. So being in communications, it's a matter of you go where they tell you to do, go do what they tell you to do. And my tasking for the first 3 months in country just happened to be working specifically with our S2, which is our intel. And as those who know, human intelligence is a huge piece in the military grand scheme of logistics. So I learned a lot about communications, talking with people, behavior analysis. So that's where it started. And then fast forward and getting out of the military, working in leadership positions from management to being on teams where communication was as important to get things done. It was also important for me to learn and develop the ability to listen and to be able to get the most out of the teams that I was working on or leading. And then the actual, what I do now in executive protection, private security, de-escalation, gives me a unique perspective as far as when you have issues with companies' leadership, whether it be performance, whether it be just the inability to communicate with people. My unique perspective comes from being on the security side, where if there's a workplace violence incident, if there's a VIP who needs protection from a certain person, and I have to uh, speak with that person, that's where the behavior analysis, that's where the human intelligence, that's where that piece comes from, being that link between the employer and the employee who's been released. So there's where the actual training that I provided comes from. It's my frustration with not being able to have that conversation with either the person who's been let go or management on exactly why that person is at the point to where they're at. So doing that, I've learned that there are a lot of skills that managers, people that are in leadership positions, if you lead, if you're a responsible decision maker within a company, you're a leader.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of skill sets that they just didn't have. And it was the frustration of not being able to have those conversations with them while I was working. So I
Mhm.
figured, let me just go ahead and start my own company to where I can specifically address that and try and get those skill sets back into those managers and those leaders' hands.
Hmm. Now that's great, and I like what your topic here is today. We're going to talk about these four pillars, but I think too. I mean, once again, you've walked into some challenging situations. Obviously, in the military, um, that's its own animal. But it's like even in the corporate space, I think this is probably a topic that a lot of leaders neglect to even think about. Is that correct?
It is, and it's not that they don't have the training. It's one of those you don't know what you don't know. You don't do what you don't know how to do.
Hmm.
So, what I try to do with this framework is make everything simple, make it applicable to where the specific person is in their environment, and meet them where they're at, and give them a destination based on their challenges.
Hmm.
So, going to like the Safety Congress, Ohio Safety Congress, there are 30, 40 different industries that all have the same challenges when it comes to leadership, and you'd be surprised how many comes down to communication.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, why don't you jump on in and teach us today what we need to know, and then
Yeah.
as we have questions along the way, we can talk about those as well. And but yeah, jump on in.
All
Yeah,
right.
I'm gonna need you to get started, Jabari. I gotta learn what to do with Chris when that day comes.
All right, so let's jump into
Oh,
this. One of the things that I do want definitely want to make sure that if people have questions, they can chime in. If they type them in, just go ahead and let me know what the questions are. If you guys have questions, feel free. It's an open discussion. So let's go ahead and get started. Most threats don't announce themselves. Neither does failure. Where does that come from? People are looking to react to things in a work environment or at home, and I'm trying to bring more awareness or a sense of urgency, the concept of being not reactive but responsive. So, what are you going to get out of this training? So, you're going to get a full operating system from conversation prep to measurable follow through and not just a talking framework. So we're talking about actionable skills that you can use as soon as you get done with this presentation. Well, there's a little bit more to it, but it'll give you the idea to start asking questions to be asked and conversations to be had. So we've got examples of how to effectively use this 4F framework in a specific tough conversation from your world perspective to get the results that you want. So, for example, if I were to ask you, Wendy, what is your definition of a tough conversation?
A
What would you
tough
say?
conversation would be something where you're uncomfortable, and you're not sure what kind of reaction you're going to get when you have it.
Very good. Chris?
yeah, I think it's very similar. It's, when you don't know what the response is going to be in the other person, it's that whole thing that we can make up a lot of guesses in our head of what it will be like, and we kind of role play in our mind long before we ever get to the conversation. And then, in my experience, most of those conversations have gone better than I expected, but at the same time, you still don't know what to predict the other person's response to be.
Absolutely. And one of the things that this training is, and that we're going to talk about, is something um, that we use in the military. Um, and it's a skill set that we use, which allows us to not necessarily do away with the concept of emotions, but allows us to take a snapshot of everything going on in the environment and do what we call um, it's taking a step back. Sorry, I'm forgetting the word, the term. But it basically allows us to take a detachment. Sorry, allows us to detach from the situation and get a fresh perspective while still being alert and responsive to the environment. So we're going to talk about that. These four pillars that are involved in the training are failure, faith, fellowship, and follow through. So who's this for? This is not a complete list. So those of you that are watching this that are in a different environment, this is for you as well. So this has just happened to be partially list, which are managers avoid hard conversations until problems escalate into performance safety or legal issues, where you have situations where emotions spike in the room, leaders freeze, overreact, or shut down. Another scenario would be good talks don't translate into clear agreements, documentation, or follow through. So these are some of the problems. So what I want you to do, if you're taking notes, if you're looking to get more information, I want you to insert your specific problem, your or challenge as it relates to you. And it's not just for work. These concepts also apply to life, whether it be in relationships, or whether it be in community involvement. We all deal with conversations which we deem that are t tough, meaning we don't want to have them. So all these things that we're going to be talking about, freezing, the overacting, the shutting down. Everything that we're talking about today is from the leadership standpoint because it'll allow you to speak to whoever is on the other end of that conversation. So I want to make that very clear. So specifically, who's this for? Mid-level people managers, and I say people managers because you can be a manager of absolutely nothing having to do with people. Team leads. Again, a team lead could be a manager who started out and was hired to make sure the operations went smoothly. And oh, by the way, HR came and said you're going to be responsible for the hiring, firing. So now you're actually a leader. HR business professionals with hiring and firing responsibilities. I've seen situations where large, let's say 50, 60 people at a time come into a brand new onboarding scenario where they go through with HR. Well, guess what? That's that person's first interaction with that organization is that HR representative. So that's who they know first. New managers with little to no leadership training but are responsible for disciplinary duties to include suspension or firing of employees. Again, this goes back to that we just hired you in as a manager. We like what you do. Oh, by the way, you don't have any leadership skills or leadership training, but you're still going to be in charge of people. And you, the unsilent majority. If you lead, then you're in the right place. So a bad conversation or a conversation you've been avoiding. Most leaders do not lack the courage to lead. They lack a framework for the moment leadership actually requires courage. When feedback must be given, when behavior must be addressed, when an emotional employee is across the table, and relationship still must survive the truth. One point to keep in mind, avoidance is not neutral. Every conversation you postpone is a decision you've already made to let the problem grow. So statistic-wise, there's a couple little tidbits. 73% of managers report avoiding necessary feedback conversations. Now, again, my experience is being on both sides of those conversations. I see why, and I learned why they avoid that necessary feedback conversations and the results of that. One in four performance issues go unaddressed for more than 6 months. And again, unfortunately, on the executive protection, private security side, within that 6 months, I get called out for the fallout of those unaddressed performance issues. So the good thing about this training that people are going to be either, all right, I'm already squared away. This is just a reminder, a sense of urgency, and it could also result in, and I've had conversations where people don't have these systems in place, and this is exactly why you should consider this concept. So we're looking at 57% of voluntary departures traced back to conversations that never happened. So we're talking, I was never given the opportunity to plead my case. The person that let me go wasn't even in my immediate chain of command, which goes back to either an HR representative who that just happens to be on their list of roles, or it could be a person who, um, for that time frame, that evolution of letting go in a mass layoff, you're going to be responsible for letting 30 people go that don't even know you. As crazy as that sounds, it happens in the world. So first, on the first pillar, we're talking about failure, talking about recognizing what went wrong. Something to keep in mind, failure is not the enemy, it's feedback. So I ask you guys to think about how many of you in your entire career have ever made a mistake that cost your company money, some way, shape, or form, right? How many people have ever made a mistake that cost relationships? And we'll go one step further. How many people have ever made a mistake that could have potentially cost somebody their lives? Well, that would be me. So, quick backstory about what drives me to do what I do. This right here is a 26-ton amphibious assault vehicle. This was home for the first 4 years of my military career in the Marine Corps. That wide-eyed Marine you see in the front, that's the driver. That's what I started out as. I was responsible for making sure that 26-ton amphibious assault vehicle tanked the floats in the water, got from A to B, including all the infantry guys you don't see sitting in the back. So the guy sitting at the top in front of the guns, that's the crew chief. And the guy with his back to us, that's the officer in charge of the infantry troops that are in the back. So why is this? What does this have to do with what I do now? Early in my career, I was afforded the opportunity to be responsible for this vehicle as an interim crew chief on a very high profile, what we call dog and pony show. We had big wigs from Washington all over the world sitting at a combat town, and we've been training for this evolution for probably 2 months, in and out of the water, going back and forth, making sure logistics were down. So what happened? Long story short, this is a large 250-pound plenum door. So You'll have to just read the book to get the entire story. But the mistake that I made could have cost one of my Marines' lives. We'd rehearsed this, we'd gone over it and over it. So the reason I say this and I tell you this is because I understand what it means to make mistakes as a leader. And I also understand that you have to realize that I didn't get the opportunity to just cry, go off to the side, see how I was doing. I still had a mission to accomplish, and I still had people that were responsible for even after this happened. So I get what it means to make mistakes as a leader. And I don't belittle anybody whose mistakes cost money or anything. I'm not saying my situation is any better, but this specific incident is probably 50 to 60% of why I am the way I am, the person that I am today, as far as leadership, as far as research, as far as making sure that I measure my words when I'm speaking, when I'm talking to people, because I never want to have somebody that I've had a conversation with feel the way I felt when I looked at my Marine's face when he came out from underneath this plenum, which I dropped on his head. So, failure, recognizing what went wrong. A couple of tools that we use in this framework are studying the incident with honest evaluation. My honest evaluation in my scenario was an after action report, which specifically set out to find out exactly what happened. We go through the entire steps and find out what went wrong, what mistakes I made. I didn't go actually look into the pack and see that my Marine was down there doing what he was supposed to be doing. I was in a rush. I was trying to make things simpler. I didn't follow my own procedures. Translation to business. How do you identify missed warning signs? Do you have a safety system in place? Are you following that system? If so, when you're talking to people about mistakes they make, are you going by specifically what happened with being devoid of emotion, which is hard to do because almost every conversation we have has some form of element of emotion involved. So some of the notes and some of the actual tools that we use that we teach in this training are to diagnose avoidance patterns. What is an avoidance pattern? It's any action or inaction used to escape, minimize, or ignore uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, situations, or sensations. That is the ability to detach from how you feel as the leader, the supervisor, the person that has to make the ultimate decision. That's what that's talking about. It's not easy to do. The average manager, regardless, again, it's not anything bad. It's not a downside. It is what it is. The average supervisor, manager, doesn't have this skill set because they've never had to use it before. It's not easy to do, but it is something to be learned. So you want to name the gap with the facts and not blame. So we're talking about you're taking into account feedback. Are you getting that person's feedback in that conversation? Are you setting boundaries or conversation during that conversation? Are you clarifying the person's role in whatever happened? Finding out from their perspective. Tell me what happened from where you're at. Are you paying attention to behavior? Are you ensuring that every word that comes out of your mouth is including your own and as well as the company values when you're speaking to the person? These are some of the things that we talk about and that we address in this portion of the training. So, an observation, the avoided conversation is the data your team has been waiting for. Faith, the second pillar in this framework. Believe in your capabilities, trust your training, and believe your team. So I had an opportunity to become a supervisor on a security team. And I'd been there for probably 2 or 3 months. And I sat back and I observed and I listened to what the challenges were presented to me as a supervisor of a night shift security team. So after finding out what happened, I went back and I had a conversation with my supervisor and I said, I need your help. If you want me to get the team on board, I need you to come down, doesn't matter when, pick a night, and I need you to walk this route with me so you can see exactly what the pushback is and the safety concerns is from our team because I've already done it. That did not happen. He didn't show up. He said he would, but he never did. So let's talk about faith. Let's talk about leading with confidence during uncertainty. My thought process after that conversation was, how do I continue to get or keep the loyalty, the faith, and the confidence in those who I'm responsible for uh, training and working for me if I couldn't get that from above? And guess what? Managers, supervisors, leaders have that same problem. As an example we talked about before, they're put in a position to where they don't have any leadership position, but yet there are people that are responsible for them now. This is your day one. This is your ability to put your own system in place and create that environment. So it's by having those conversations with your people, learning about what your people need, finding out what you can do to make their jobs better. Some managers just say, "Well, I don't have any support above me, so I can't do anything." We're going to see if we can eliminate that from the thought process moving forward. Trust your training and your preparation. Trust the system. If you have a system in place, do you trust it? Meaning, do you trust that the things that are implemented in your program, you believe? So when you have that conversation, and you'd be surprised, people know. Just like we kids know when we're not exactly being truthful, those employees on the other side of that table know exactly what if we're actually having confidence in what we're saying. So as far as a reflection, it's something to think about. Where do I need to trust myself and my team more fully? We're always thinking about back to the tools that we want to use in this. We want to be able to handle emotion, de-escalation. Do I even know what de-escalation means? Relationship preservation. If you don't have relationship, you don't have anything. Anybody that's been in any type of leadership scenario will tell you. Even if you're on the opposite side, if you can't trust the person that's responsible for providing you with that peace of mind to know that you can come to them with something, your training that you need to do your job to the best of the ability and make you feel comfortable at your job. If you don't have that, then you're going to be at a disadvantage. Fellowship, building strong teams. Safety cultures are built through trust and communication. So this crazy guy standing on the top of the wall, if you look at him and look at about it, you can't fake this picture. This guy, we're at a retreat up in the mountains in California, and he was there. I met him the first day, and short gentleman, older. He had already been there for 3 days. Every day he would walk the property and come back to this wall. And he was pretty much ready to go to tears when I first talked to him. And I said, "What's going on?" I said, "I sat here for 3 days in front of this wall and I knew this is something that I wasn't going to be able to do." The group you see below him, every single person, regardless of age, physical limitations, we got them up and over this wall in the quickest time ever. How do we do this? Why did this happen? Because we create an open channel of information sharing. This wouldn't have happened without communication. Why? Because of being the person that put this evolution together, I picked a team. I made sure that we had two people. This guy here, right here, looks like the Hulk with a little bit of receding hairline. He was one of my two big beasts we had that were willing to stand in front of that wall and let everybody else climb up over their shoulders and up that wall. I had another guy over here with a hat on. He was the one in charge of making sure that every person that went up that wall had a hat on because those are safety reasons and these things that had to be in place. I had someone else making sure that everyone was either, if they weren't in charge of the hats, they were standing behind them with the hands up, making sure that the people that were going up the wall, because you can only have two people at the top, helping them get up there, making sure nobody fell. So you had to have some serious trust, some serious open lines of communication, and a collaborative safety culture to make this evolution happen. So, translation to business. Again, this presentation is for the actual leaders. Do leaders, and do you have other leaders that you can talk to, communicate with, collaborate with? Because it's not easy to be a leader without being able to talk to others. Now you have some organizations where we have what they call the fancy C-suite. Well, that's five or six executives that are all in that level, but how many of them actually talk to each other? How many of them have that safe feeling in their environment that they can talk to each other without feeling of repercussion from talking to somebody else, or trust that they're actually going to listen to and help them get better at their jobs? And something for each individual leader to think about. Is my team communicating freely? Are you creating that environment for them to speak open and freely about whatever is going on? I remember I had a scenario, it was a mass layoff, and I went in to meet the CEO, who was a short Italian guy, really cool. And he said, okay, I need you to keep up with me. We're going to go talk to the civil. He walked from um, group to group, and the groups were all already together and they were talking and they were communicating what was going on. And I remember leaving the first group and I looked at it, I said, that's a smart process to have. That was something as stressful as this going on right now. And he said, oh no, these guys do it every day. I said, so they huddle and they talk each and every day? He said, absolutely. He said, I need to know, and these managers need to know that if somebody's coming to work and there's something going on, it's not going to be allow them to be 100% at their best. We need to know that before the workday starts. So they created that collaborative safety culture. They have a safe place where the employees can talk to each other about what's going on so they can have the best possible day before the day even starts. Office spaces can do that. Managers that have you can either do one of two things. You can either say we don't have time, don't create these environments and these scenarios and have something happen down the line where you have three or four people that don't trust the process because they don't feel like they can speak to themselves, or you can provide that. So diagnosing avoidance patterns, we talked about that before. Choosing the right conversation type. Now, again, boundaries, behavioral patterns, values. Let's talk about behavior or environment for a second. As a leader, as a manager, we love where is home? Our office, right? We feel the most control. We have everything we need to be able to have a conversation. But if you're having a conversation with an employee who's already stressed out, and you have the ability to change the environment alone to make it more neutral, rather than having a meeting in your office, you have it in the lunchroom or the break room. We have a quiet environment where there's no one has control. Creating an open environment for anyone in any specific conversation is an ability to be used by management and by leaders. Be surprised how easy it is to have an open. You can feel you're and again with the intention of deleting the pushback by taking down tension before the communication even starts. Control your environment. Create an open environment for somebody to want to talk to you about something. So running a structured conversation flow. That's basically, we were talking about speeches before, talking about your opening, doing your research. Do you know the person that you're talking to? Do you know why they're in your office? Do you know the background? If you don't have a system in place, if they are on a performance enhancement program that you don't know about, you're starting that conversation, you don't have all the facts. Your impact isn't going to be the way you want it to. If your intention is to have a simple communication, find out how you can help that person get better, so they leave knowing that at the minimum you are there for them and you're going to help them get through those things. These are things that can be easily dealt with or easily avoided by controlling those environments, by controlling those things. Agreement. In my line of work, detaching from everything that's going on so I get all the information that I need. Sometimes managers and leaders don't seem to understand the concept that it doesn't matter how well they talk, it doesn't matter what they communicate, that person might already be checked out. What they do when they leave that building might just be determined by that communication, that conversation that you have with them. I can't tell them to do that because in a sanctuary, the ushers, the greeters, those are the ones that build the relationship. Those are the ones that build a rapport. When I tell them, if you come and get me and my security staff, that's going to be a completely different conversation. To give yourselves as the leaders, as the relationship builders, as the people these employees are responsible for and they trust, you want to build that loyalty, give them the benefit of the doubt by having a consistent conversation, by having all the facts, having all the information you need to know that when you're done with that conversation, you will have done everything possible to make the best possible scenario. So addressing behavior, not identity, de-escalating emotions, hear the human, and protect the relationship. Guys, have any questions or thoughts so far? Any specific scenarios where you think this might be
Well,
questions about a specific scenarios?
not so much a specific scenario as much as I what I'm hearing you say is about being intentional and proactive, right? Like that's really kind of the key to all this is you're setting the stage because we know that tough things are going to come up over time and workplace, situations. So do you feel like, that I'll say that preventative work or preparation, is that something that you see that kind of gets squeezed out a lot among leaders and teams, or what's been your
Just
experience that?
just from my experience, I'll say it's both. And a lot of it boils down to they don't have the time.
Hmm.
And again, I always have to go back to either you make the time, create the system, or call me when things go bad, go sideways, and I have to come in and fix the problem. Um, the most egregious, ridiculously horrifying incidents in the country have unified people in ways that they never thought of because they didn't have a choice. In the military, if we have an accident, we have what's called a safety stand down. That means unless you're in combat, everything stops. Every unit goes back and they do what's called an after action review. Find out what happened, find out what went wrong, check emotions, make sure everybody's ready to go, and how do we fix the problem to make sure that never happens again. So you can either realize and understand the tensions are already high because you don't have that in place and you need to figure out how to implement it, which is something that I help do, or you wait for the back end and the fallout. So some of them have it in place and they squeeze it out just because they don't have time or they don't know how to do it. They don't know how long it's going to take. So I like to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that once we talk about it and they understand that they have an option, that they figure out a way. If you can take the average person
Mhm.
who says, I don't have time to eat X amount of protein, I don't have enough time to drink water, and you can give them a timeline from the time they wake up in the morning to the time they go to bed, and you figure out a timeline, what we do in reverse timeline in the military. If you can figure that out, then you can, with the correct information, with the correct um, sense of urgency and the correct system, you can create a system that will allow you to implement that.
Hmm.
So I have a quick question, Jabari, and one
Yeah.
thing, especially probably women more so, but your de-escalate emotions. So those can get pretty heated. What would
Hmm.
be some, and it could be very unexpected too, right? And it could
Yep.
get heated on the leader side or the employee side. So, what would be some tips or what would be some suggestions on how to approach that to de-escalate the emotions if things start to get a little heated? Is there something that you have seen that works really well, phrases, or I don't even know, but I know a lot
No,
of times, I mean, you can
that's
even use what's cool about all this too is you can even use this in your personal life, right?
absolutely.
And so de-escalating emotions with family, spouses, anything like that. I mean, how do you do that or recognize, I guess, because sometimes things can all of a sudden just blow up. And I'm sure there were a little bit of warning signs, but you kind of overlook it. So what can you do or what are some techniques to try to keep those emotions in check or calm it back down?
That's a very good question. So, from my experience, what I do is I always set the attention of why I'm there and my purpose. I acknowledge that what the person is saying, because again, when it comes down to people being let out or being let go for whatever happened, one of the things they complain about, I wasn't heard, wasn't given the opportunity to speak my side. Nobody understands what I'm going through. So I need to make sure that they understand that I'm there as a neutral party. I'm listening to what they say by sometimes a mirroring. I'll mirror back what they said. Or
Okay.
if they say this is crazy and nobody's listening, I'll say something as simple as it sounds like you got you got a reason to be as emotional as you are. That lets them heard, acknowledges what they say, and it brings them back down to a less emotional, actionable place to where they just want to communicate why they're so frustrated. So like there are a lot of tools, but behavior analysis allows you to listen and observe your surroundings and see that what you can do. So there's a lot of different things, but I think that's mirroring where they're coming from, acknowledging what they're saying, and making them understand that you are there to help them and acknowledge them.
Perfect.
Good question.
Excellent.
Follow through, the fourth pillar, executing with precision. And here is one of the biggest things that is lacking, and I'll explain why. Awareness and planning mean nothing without execution. Story time. One of the details that we had to do involved a parking lot. Now, in any parking lot, any scenario where you have there's already tension going on or what's happened inside, what do you see here? It's a tow truck, right? I don't know how many people have ever had a vehicle towed before, but when those tow trucks come and tow your vehicle, do they come and tell you, do me a favor, go ahead and take everything out personal because we're gonna tow your car? No. Tow truck drivers, it's 2026. What do you think is one of the main things that a tow truck driver is going to have besides a crowbar in his truck?
A
A gun.
gun.
A gun. So what we had and this happened to be in this grounds were tow trucks that were coming in to take vehicles. This specific scenario happened to be I was a lead agent on this detail. We had a tow truck company that came in this lot. Now, again, this was a lot that where the tensions were already high inside. My goal was to make sure that this tow truck wasn't able to get the vehicle they wanted, which would have caused things to happen that nobody else just knew about. So why did I use this specific example for follow through? I deployed my team after I jumped in the rental vehicle. I came up, cut off the vehicle, got in front of him. So I stopped him from being able to do what he was going to do. Driver in the vehicle and the passenger didn't get out. I sat there and looked at me like I was crazy because, again, excuse me, not the regular security guard, full kit, open carry, vest, and everything. Just went up to have a conversation. Well, what they didn't see was I had a security agent on my team deployed to the left and to the right of them. I didn't tell them what was going on. In my head, I knew that I needed to neutralize this tow truck driver from doing what he wanted to do and make sure that there weren't anything bad that could have happened. Got him to leave, escorted him off the property, had the after action review, and the first words out of my mouth was, "Guys, you did awesome. I couldn't have drawn that up on a board any better than the way that worked out. You guys listened and did exactly what I thought. I need you to go ahead and write down because somebody's going to ask what happened because the police are probably going to come out later. Write down what happened in your words so we can go back and go over it." I had one of my agents ask me, why was it so important that you got out there? And I said, well, we're sitting on a property providing security, additional armed security from a workplace violence incident. So what makes you think that that person who owned that vehicle, they might have had a car seat. That might have been all they had. So my job was to make sure that I neutralized that driver from being able to get the vehicle because I didn't know people were coming out there all the time. I wouldn't have known who the owner of that vehicle was, who the driver of that vehicle was. So the after action review allowed me to get the information from what happened, review what went good, what went bad, how we can make it better if that scenario ever happened again. Translation to business. Translating awareness into disciplined action. Hold yourself and others accountable. Again, this is from the leader standpoint. What's the one commitment you can ask yourselves? I've been delaying that I'll execute now. What are you doing as a leader to make sure that you're executing with precision? Now, if you look in our notes, we've got execute follow through, specific tools, metrics. If you're going to create a performance enhancement plan and are you going to have metrics? Are you going to have check-ins? Are you going to have documentation? Are you going to have escalation pathways? So basically, metrics. What's the new procedure? What are we going to do to get better? Or am I going to check in? Our check-ins are going to be every 2 weeks. I'm going to come see you and we're going to talk about these things. We're going to document anything that's happened in that time frame that we need to work on, good or bad, especially we want it good. So you're setting the intention, you're empowering them to get involved in the process so the outcomes stick long beyond that performance enhancement program or whatever you have in place. And again, you've got organizations that have these that just need the reminder of how vital these are. You have some organizations that are smaller and just don't have these systems in place. It works for everybody. So you want to convert the conversation into a written, dated, owner-assigned action. So without follow through, there's no relationship. Without a relationship, there's no trust. And you're looking to open a whole can of worms that don't need to be open, regardless of the size of the situation, regardless of the industry, regardless whether it's at home, work, community. These things can be applied in everywhere in life. What becomes a habit in one place is going to become a habit somewhere else. So the after action review, this is one of those tools that can be put into place. You're turning hindsight into foresight. No mission ends without one. SEAL team practice. SEAL team, Marine Corps, Army. I can only speak for those because only the ones that I served in. I wasn't in the SEALs, but in the Marine Corps and the Army, after action review is vital. You have to talk about it. In the fire service, being blessed to volunteer for a few years in Springfield Township. I remember we were doing training over in Enon. We were doing roof training. And there was an incident, won't get into specifics, people came back emotional. That EMT crew came back. We didn't get to watch them, but we saw what happened. They cleared out the squad bay, cleared out the maintenance bay. That EMT room went in the office and they had their after action review. They had their debrief. They needed to know, are you good? Are you happening? Because if you say you're good, as soon as we get done here, you're going to get back in your ambulance. You're going to go in service and take the next call. After action review means you take down your emotions when they're fresh, your thought processes. That's why I'm big on when you have questions when you're presenting, let people ask the questions when they have them. Don't wait to the end. So anybody think of any scenarios, any workplace examples of where they implemented something like this or would like to see something like this introduced or would do any good? Whether it be communicating, whether it be putting something into place.
I just think I don't have any scenarios. I mean, I actually worked for Army JAG at one point, and
Okay.
I've worked in some law firms that were pretty substantial in size, and we had some incidents, and I think it is necessary to have that communication. And again, it goes back to that culture side, right? Where you were talking about create that open environment so people aren't afraid to come to the leader, the supervisor, the manager, and talk about what's going on, whether it be personal life or professional, right? Everybody says you got to keep your personal life out of your job. But as humans, sometimes that's challenging. And maybe
Absolutely.
just so that a manager knows, hey, it could be a medical thing or whatever. This is what's going on, and I'm going to have these disabilities that could happen. So I want you to be aware. And so many people, I feel like, have such a hard time going to a manager or a supervisor and letting them know that. But that could just by being able to do that and create that open environment, that could keep that person who's going through that situation employed because he could go on a light duty or change jobs, or if that manager was aware and could, understand what was happening and make any changes. And I think, especially in this world today, you have to have that. You have to be able to have that open communication and be flexible. That if somebody has some issues, maybe they're not perfect for the position they're in right now, but you know what? All their skills and what they say they can do, I can put them over here, and be willing to make those changes or those pivots that you might have to for a little while. I mean, not with Zooms, with everything that's, everybody working from home. I think it's such a lost art for the communication in general, and I think it's so needed to have, and don't do it over Zoom, right?
Right.
Have the meeting, the conversation as best as you can in person.
Absolutely. Let's take that same concept, same thought process, and we'll bring it back home. Communities. You'd be surprised how hard it is to get a group of people in the same communities that know they have the same problems, all in the same room, to be open-minded enough to say, "Give me what the challenges are and see how we can work through it." You've got 15 people with 15 problems, but nobody has any solutions. But when you bring something up, unless you have the ability to make that solution benefit every single person in that room, Half of them aren't gonna buy off on it. Half of them are gonna come up with other excuses. You even with what I do, having to be have the skill set to be able to communicate with people, it's mitigation. All I can do is use every tool in my toolbook, and even things that I've learned the day before or learning while I'm speaking. All I can do is use those to make the best possible outcome with what's given to me. A
Mhm.
lot of managers say, look, it's nothing's going to happen again because I don't have any support from above. Is- excuse me. I like it to the clean slate policy. We use that a lot. My dad taught me that. When you are in a position to where you have something new that's on your plate that's never been before, it's a clean slate. You create the scenario. You create the system. You create everything that happens. Don't be afraid to do that. And again, it goes back to I don't know that'll do any good. Well, my job is to make sure that you're aware of what can happen if you don't try, which is absolutely nothing.
Mhm.
You
You know,
go,
Jabari, one other scenario that I'm thinking about, we have a lot of nonprofits as chamber members. We are a nonprofit ourselves as a chamber. We do our golf outing each year. So when we do it in our annual meeting, when we have events and activities where it's not just like our staff team, as small as we are, it's when we have volunteers and other people engaging in an event or a scenario. I think about how do you how do you do this when maybe you're not with those people all the time, right? And you mentioned like community issues. It'd be kind of a similar scenario where those people aren't doing business together every day. So how do you work this when um, it's kind of a short-term project, maybe like an event, or it's a short-term initiative like in the community?
so that's a good question. So what you're looking at there is you're looking at building rapport, building relationship, building trust on the fly with the intention of the experience lasting longer than the event.
Mhm.
So you can only control that as much as your ability to listen to find out what the other entities want, what they're looking for, give them the best opportunity, and follow up. Hey, this really went great. I appreciate your time. You helped out a lot tremendously in this event. We're looking to do a couple of these in the past, and we'd hope to be able to get your input to make it the best thing possible
Mhm.
without giving up control and saying, "Hey, just go run the next one because we want you to come to the next one." So you have
Yeah,
to build that. That makes
well, I was gonna
sense.
say that's the challenge I think we feel like a lot of times is you're so busy getting ready for the event or the thing
Hmm.
that by the time it happens, you're like glad it's over and exhausted. And it's like, and then we're like, okay, let's not think about that till we do it again next year or whenever. So I think that that's the challenge is making the time, investing the time, as you say, to really do the reflection point and then this after action review, because I think it's that whole thing of when it's most fresh in your mind versus if you
Hmm.
get back together a month later, people forget about things that happened or, whatever.
So no, that's a good question. So you look at the pre-planning. You already know that's a challenge. In order to give ourselves the best possible outcome, we are going to plan ahead. We're going to let everybody get settled and go home and unwind tomorrow, whether even if it's on a Sunday, we're going to meet up a time, whether it be on Zoom, preferably in person. Write down what went bad, what went good, what do we want to improve on for next year? What did we see? And you could hire, if you've got volunteers, have one person going around and be the PR person. All I want you to do during this event, go around and look and see people's reactions. Are people engaged? Are people talking? Are they communicating? Are we creating an environment where people want to meet other people? So all those things put in place, and that after action review can help you for the next event.
Mm.
What do we want to get out of this meeting? Okay, we want to be able to list a group of people that we want to include. We want to have a personal message for them. This is exactly what we saw, and this is exactly what people are speaking on. This is why we're reaching out to you. We need to add a couple more people because I felt like I was getting stretched thin. So pre-planning.
Mhm.
Why do you want to? What's the purpose of action? What do you want to have out of it? Create the time for that event, plan accordingly, execute on what you want to say you're going to do because hey, I've got an hour, you got my attention for another 52 minutes. What are we doing? Get it through. And then the follow through is that next from that end of that day to planning the next one? Have you gone through the steps to invite people? Have you sent out the follow-up messages? Have you added the people so the challenges aren't challenges for that next year? So, and,
Mhm.
and then when you do the same thing again. So the after action review isn't just a tool to see how things went, it's also part of the follow through. So
Mhm.
that's a good segue into what are you doing in that after action review? So it's a light format. Reconstruct the intent. Pull the goal in its exact original words from whatever document you created, the slide or the email. In this scenario, it would be the pictures. It would be that communication from that PR person. What did you see? What did you hear? How were the communications? How were the conversations? Did people? You can say, "Hey, are you doing good? Are you feeling like this is something you're excited about? What do you like about being here? What can we do better to make the experience better for you?" Write all those things down and document. Record reality. Write what happened in clear facts. Keep the facts separate from opinions. Well, so and so was just over talking to so and so because they wanted to get money out of him, and that's the only reason they came. It's not your job. Your goal is to maximize the experience and eliminate those challenges for the next event. And at the bottom, what lessons from our last project? From the last time we did this, have we failed to apply? Well, we said we wanted to get a couple more people for PR, or we said we wanted to get another person because Wendy was jumping around with her chicken with her head cut off, talking to 15 people and trying to do three things. And we said we were going to get somebody else, but that person, she didn't really communicate what she wanted from them, so they were just there drinking and talking to people. So we didn't get that out of it. So that the after action has its purpose. You just have to create what you want that purpose to be, record it, talk about it, and execute.
Mhm.
All right, one more scenario came to mind. So we're going to be moving into our business success center in a few months. We're
Hmm.
going to be hosting a lot of different groups. There's going to be a lot of
Mhm.
events that we aren't in charge of, but our facility will be hosting and the space. How do we help groups be successful and making sure that all those expectations and standards are, applied? Because a lot of businesses, they might be in the event hosting space, or they might not be in charge of the event itself, but they might be the location. So how would you advise to do what we've talked about today when you're not really the one fully in charge, but you need to have definitely influence into the situation?
Well,
So,
and,
so
and
you
I just
start
want
you
to,
start so you start with that. What do
yeah.
we want to get out of this evolution? We want to
Well,
be able to.
I'm gonna interrupt because I'm good at that. Sorry, Jabari. I just
You're
wanted
fine.
to
Go
add
ahead.
in because when I think about that too, I'm looking at it as like the location offering the safety. How do I keep this group that I'm not in charge in that's coming to use this place safe
So
and
let's
and to
that.
mitigate any potential issues ahead of time, right? That is what when I look at it, that's kind of my goal. I want to be able to make sure that everybody that's coming in to use that we have clear and concise rules to follow or procedures to follow. And my end goal is that everybody is in there, it's safe, and they all leave safe.
Okay, your question, Wendy, is a completely different conversation. It's a very good point. So I will start with yours. You control access and you will bake into the concept of the end result from now to the time you open those doors. You control the ability to control access to every room, every office, every space in that building. So are you putting those systems in place? We want key fob doors. We want controlled access to these certain areas because we'll have certain event people in events and we're not going to be there with them. But we want them and their people to feel safe, knowing that once they walk in this building, they don't have to worry about 50 people coming off the street because they saw a bunch of people going into the new Beaver Creek Chamber of Commerce building. So you control the ability to safeguard that building itself. So are you doing that? How are you doing that based on what Chris said? We want to have these groups in. We want to give them access to certain parts of the building without having to be there with them. Who's going to be there? What are we going to allow them to do? So create the secure scenarios for that. So you take that off that concern off the table. Chris, back to your question. And Whitney, I know I didn't completely answer your question. Like I said, it's a completely different conversation. I don't think we have enough time to get into
Right.
that. When we get done with this,
That'll be an
Wendy,
offline conversation.
yeah. So
Yeah, I know
Chris,
how to find you.
so Chris, back to your question. How do you how do you make sure that you are providing the best event? Ask them what they want. Here's the space we're going to be able to provide. What do you want to have happen in this event? What kind of spaces are you going to need? That will let you know how to make sure you give them access to it or make sure somebody's there to give them access. If you don't want to give out stuff, key fobs, make sure they have access to those spaces. Make sure they have everything that they need. And who cares if they're doing their own thing? They're using your space for a reason. Provide the best possible experience based on what you have the ability to provide and meeting all their needs. And whatever else happens, happens.
So once again, be proactive.
Be proactive. Hey, if we give you the opportunity to use a space, like you can even do a survey. If you had access to this space and with these hours, what type of events would you need? What type of challenges do you think there would be? You let them fill in what you need to answer. You don't know what they're going to do. They might have, when you have that first conversation 6 months down the line, that might change in 3 months.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Thank you.
No problem. And closing, what are your priorities? If you're going to use all four of the cool thing about this system is you might have things going on that are only in, apologies, that only stem from the lack of fellowship, the lack of communication. You might have things only that pertain to follow through. But the purpose of having all four is to be able to figure out where you're at, fill in those gaps, and put the rest of the process through the filter to make sure that everything is in place. Because something's going to come up. If you notice how we had this laid out, there's no specific order. I could have started out with fellowship and faith and failure, but the follow through has to stay where it's at. But the failure, the recognizing, I'm sorry, I take it back. The first one has to stay there. But the two, faith and the fellowship, could have been intertwined. So it doesn't matter where you're at in your organization. You start with one and figure out where the problems are. You fill those in the blanks and you keep on moving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's applicable to any scenario. It doesn't matter whether it's work, whether it's community. This will work, and it has worked in any organization. It's worked in the military. It's worked in the private sector. It's worked on large teams, small groups of five. So it's a good system. It's just a matter of having that conversation with that specific organization to find out where they're at, where their challenges are, and where we need to start.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jabari. Right, way to end right on time. First of all, excellent. But we like to start on time and end on time to respect
Why?
everyone's time,
We,
right,
we,
Wendy?
we want to
But
respect your time. Absolutely.
but Jabari, yeah, I'm glad you put this slide up because this is an overview presentation, right, of a deeper training that you walk teams through. So you want to take a minute to share anything about that, about how people can get connected to you so that they can do that if they want to and explore that training.
Yeah, so I have my website. If I can get this slide to work, you can go to. So what I would prefer you to do, I'm having some issues with my contact portion of my website. You can get all the information for my services on my website, overwatchsecure.com. But specifically to get a hold of me to have that next conversation, just go ahead and email me at jabari@overwatchsecure.com. In the subject line, put in discovery call request or questions, and we can get together and see where in the process your company organization is at. And it could be individual coaching just to say, hey, look, I've got some things that I want to work on. And you'd be surprised how many um, executives, CEOs, supervisors just understand or just realize, hey, look, I just don't have those communication skills, and I want to make myself a better person for my
Mhm.
work, my community, myself, and my family. So,
Mhm. No, that's awesome. So one of the good things, right? One of the reasons we record this is so more people can watch it down the road too. But maybe this brief training here and overview could be something that folks, if you could pass along to somebody else that you're like, hey, we ought to check this out. So watch this video and just understand the framework because I think that really helps people understand the different challenges that they may know, but they may not really identify or verbalize properly, kind of like you mentioned. And so I think that this, if there's somebody that you think, hey, should listen to this, watch this, and then we should have a conversation with Jabari, pass it along because we'll have this on our YouTube channel. It's been live streaming on our Facebook page. So, Jabari, thanks again for your time
Yeah.
for doing this
yeah, thanks for
today.
having me.
And
Appreciate you guys' time.
it's been
This was
excellent.
awesome. We have to talk further, Jabari. I have
Yes, ma'am. As
questions.
soon as we get
Wen-
done.
Wendy has plenty for you to work on with us.
Chris, I'm ready.
Hey, bye,
No
Howard.
coffee, but I'm ready.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks
All
for
right.
being here today, and
Thank you guys.
we
Thanks,
will be
guys. I
putting up
appreciate
the
it.
recording as soon as we can. Hey, by the way, next month we are going. Our next Zoom Business Boost is going to be with Joshua Lysek from Lysek Ghostwriting. He's going to talk about how to utilize AI to save us time and increase profits in our businesses. He's been talking to a lot of small business owners about AI and just how to utilize it. A lot of people have a lot of questions and are kind of getting swallowed up in all the options out there. So. Look for that. It's on the calendar on our at beavercreekchamber.org if you'd like to join us for that call as well. We'll be doing the same thing, but yeah, we're super excited about that one as well. So, other than that, everybody take care, have a great day, and let us know if there's anything we can do to help you guys. So, see you guys later.
Bye,
Thanks, guys.
everybody.
Hey, thanks for coming on, Ryan. Appreciate it.